everyone, welcome to the next in our series of exploring treasures. What are the treasures that God is revealing to us in this season? And I've got two really good friends with me today. I've got Jeannette and Jack with me, who are part of Revelation Family Church. Jeannette, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone who's watching today?
Hi everyone, I'm Jeannette. I am a primary teacher part of the week. I'm a mummy to two beautiful girls. I'm also on the worship team and the kids teams at church.
Brilliant, thanks Jeannette. And Jack?
Hi, I'm Jack. I work as a health assistant, and I have my wife Zoe, who's a learning assistant at the college, and she's a sister.
Brilliant. Now, I was really keen to speak to the two of you as part of this series. In a really pertinent way, we've been exploring where do we find, we've used Isaiah 45 verse 3, which talks about finding hidden treasure and riches in secret places. And in the midst of this pandemic, things have been shaken. Things not of the kingdom have been shaken. The world's been shaken. Business has been shaken. Education has been shaken. Everything's been shaken. But in the midst of that shaking, there's an opportunity for us to find God in that place. And I was really keen to talk to the two of you, knowing that both of you have had and suffered with the COVID virus, and just to kind of catch a bit of that story of how it's affected you, how it's impacted you. So, Jeannette, tell us about yourself. You've had the virus recently, haven't you?
Yeah, so my experience, you can still hear, I'm still in recovery, lost my voice. So for us, it really started beginning of April, 1st of April. I was really frightened about getting it when all the things started kicking off in the media. So I didn't expect Poppy, my eldest, to go down with it first. That was a proper curveball there. So she started symptoms on the 1st of April. Very high temperature, loss of appetite, took herself off to bed for a couple of days, which, if you know Poppy, is the complete opposite of what she normally does. And then, so that was on a Wednesday. On the Sunday, 5th of April, I lost my voice. I thought that I'd started to get laryngitis, didn't feel particularly unwell, bit under the weather. So kind of carried on as normal for about a week. Knew that something was a bit fishy, but honestly thought I had laryngitis. Poppy was over it in a couple of days. And then Easter Sunday, I woke up and felt like I'd been hit by a bus. Temperature started then. The cough, which is like no other cough, started. And so from Sunday to Tuesday, felt quite rubbish. Then rang the GP and said, look, it's a really bad case of laryngitis, I've lost my voice. And that's when she said, actually, loss of voice is one of the first symptoms. What other symptoms do you have? Went through all of them, and she went, it's COVID. It's you know, it is definitely COVID. And how rubbish you're feeling. Week of feeling awful, very tired, very lethargic, managing, still kind of thinking it's not that bad. It's kind of like a flu, but feeling very unwell. Following week, took another turn for the worse. Then I was really poorly, was put on antibiotics to stop a secondary infection. My lungs were so inflamed at this point, it was very easy to catch a secondary infection and put on antibiotics to try and stop that. Had a week of that, a few days of that, then took another turn for the worse. That's when the breathing difficulties started and the panic, and I don't know whether that was because I was just so tired at that point of 3 weeks of quite nasty symptoms. Rosie went down with it in that time as well. And she was very poorly, very different to Poppy. And so I had 3 weeks of very, very nasty symptoms, continual coughing, trying to manage being a parent in that, while Rosie was getting ill, and finally started feeling better at the beginning of May, kind of May the 10th, started to lose the COVID, and then had awful pain in my chest, and because it was chest pain, was taken to hospital, where they informed me that I busted some of my ribs from coughing so hard. So I was then in excruciating pain on tramadol and Oromorph, because I just literally couldn't breathe without it being extremely painful. Rosie was still poorly in this time, and really the last week, I would say, I've now started to feel okay. Still have, my voice is better, still not there, but it's a long recovery, and it's a longer illness than most people think it is. So that's my experience.
Wow. And I know there's a lot more to that story, but those headlines are kind of grab you and really make you understand how serious this is. Jack, why don't you tell us a bit of your story?
Yeah, so I managed to get the virus at the nursing home that I worked at the time, and then I got at the beginning of May, I got symptoms. I had a temperature, I felt lethargic, and so I wasn't able to start my new job at the hospital at the time. And then I started not being able to get started vomiting. I wasn't able to get fluid down, and then a few days in, then I had to go to hospital because I was vomiting for like 5 days and wasn't able to get any fluid down. So then I had to go to hospital to have a fluid put into me, and then I went home, and then I started coughing quite a bit. It was really painful, couldn't sleep. And then I was taken back to hospital again because they were concerned about my oxygen levels. And so I was back to hospital again. And then they put me on some antibiotics, did his tests, went home again, and then still coughing. And throughout this period of time, it's been so amazing of the support from like families and friends, and also Zoe. It's been so amazing. Like I couldn't do this without Zoe. She's been my rock for the last like 4 weeks, caring for me when I was really ill, and I had really, really great care at the hospital as well. And then I think in the last probably 3 weeks, I kind of now probably feeling like getting better now. And because I don't have a temperature now anymore, I just have a temperature. And I still feel a bit lethargic as well. And I went for a walk yesterday to the pharmacy, which would normally take 20 minutes, but it took me an hour to get there and back. Because I had to keep stopping every like 10 minutes to get my breath.
Yeah.
With Zoe, so that was a bit weird.
I know you both very well. You're both fit, healthy, vibrant people. You've both got bags full of energy in that I see around you in Jeannette, in your teaching and your parenting, and Jack. You're always someone at the church who's really willing to volunteer and get stuck in. So to hear that it, less than a mile walk took you an hour to have to stop every 10 minutes like some old boy and get your breath back, is shocking to hear that. I think in society, and some of the questions I know that have been thrown at people of faith, our faith is obviously centered around Jesus. Where is God in all this? Now, I think it's very clear for us as followers of Jesus to understand the Father heart of God, that this wasn't something God sent to us. That's kind of quite clear. But there's some big questions that are asked of us by those outside of our faith, but also those within our faith. And maybe even, you may have even asked this question of yourself. Where's God in this? I know I've not had COVID, but I know in times where life's been really tough, I have sort of asked that question, God, where are you in this? And we see that with the psalmist. Often, those declarations of, where are you, God? Have you forsaken me? Have you handed me over to my enemies? So I'm just keen to hear from both of you where God has been for you in this elongated illness that you're both still clearly not fully recovered from. Where's God been in it for you? So Jeannette, can I throw that question to you?
Yeah, and I agree with you. This whole thing about, God hasn't sent this. I think this is definitely down to human activity in various parts of the world. But when we do stuff like this, when something like this happens, then God is very present, and he does come into the messes that we make, and he does pick through it and find those moments of treasure that you were talking about. So for me, it was really two things where God showed up. One was in the external environment, and one was very much within our home. So with the external environment, God shows up to me through people, and even when I was so unwell, I didn't really realise how unwell I was, and I'll talk about that in a bit with what God did with me internally. But people outside of our house did realise how unwell we were, and we needed a contingency plan, and we needed a plan because it's just me with the girls, and you know, if I go down, then our whole family goes down. And so a number of things happened that in order to support us happened that were really amazing. So the first thing that happened really was people just showed up and put meals on the doorstep. There was probably a 10-day period where I didn't cook anything. I couldn't cook anything. I couldn't stand up long enough. I could just about get off the sofa, make somebody lunch. On some days I wasn't aware who was asking for lunch, but I was able to make a sandwich. And then there would be a meal on the doorstep, or a bag of goodies, or various encouraging words, or games for the girls, just to keep us going and fed during that time. And that was all done without my knowledge. That was all done with a text sent, by the way, there's a meal coming tonight, it's this, and you'll have leftovers for tomorrow. So that was a close group of friends, and my life group who really showed up for that, my oikos group as well. Within the oikos group, I've made new connections with a couple of people who, for my mental health, would connect in and make sure I saw an adult, and it wasn't just me, because in the end I was alone with my children for 5 weeks, with no other outside contact. So the adults kind of, you know, knowing me and how extroverted I am and that I need adult company, would make sure that I actually saw someone. There were people who are part of our church family, who I'm starting to make new connections with. Anna, Mark's wife, absolutely incredible, stayed in text contact with us, dropped stuff outside the door. And then the ultimate sacrifice would have been made by a couple in our church, Rich and Maria Lush. So at one point when paramedics were called and I was really unwell, I spoke to Bruno and Fee and just said, I don't know what to do. The girls are infected. What we're going to do in this scenario if I do have to be admitted to hospital. And Rich and Maria stepped up and basically said, you know, we're young, we're fit, we're healthy, we understand the risk, and we will move in and look after your children should you need to be admitted to hospital. And that is part of the calling as to what you do. And it reminded me, actually, I've got a verse here that they just blew me away. But Galatians 6:2, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Just taking on that burden and just going, no, we don't run in the opposite direction when there's a crisis. We're Christians, we stay in there. And they said, and when I argued with them and said, you know, oh my goodness, you don't need to do that, they were like, it's what Christians have done throughout history. They've stayed in plagues and helped people. They've stepped up to the mark, and that's what we're prepared to do for you. I didn't need to go into hospital. I was very lucky. The support, external support, was enough, but that was always there for me. And then briefly, just internally, time, I think, for everyone in lockdown has slowed down. Our time frames normally, what am I doing next week? What am I doing next month? What am I doing? And in lockdown, it's been, how am I going to get through the next hour? You know, that kind of thing. With COVID, it was, how am I going to get through the next 10 seconds or the next minute, especially when you were in a coughing fit. And in that moment, because the cough is so powerful and so violent, God did two things. He kept me rooted to the spot, because you can focus on two things. You can focus on the cough, which is going to send you into a panic because it is that violent, or you can focus on something that keeps you grounded. And God was very much, imagine someone holding on to both your arms and just literally holding on to you. And I had that image a lot of, just stay with me. Just stay with me for that. You just need to do this for the next 10 seconds. You just need to do this for the next 10 seconds. That's all we're going to worry about. Nothing else matters. So God did that for me, kept me rooted to to the spot, obviously provided all the people, you know, that helped us, and just really was there. I felt scared, but I never felt in mortal danger. And at the point where paramedics were called, it was partly because I was so exhausted. But my prayer was, please keep me out of hospital, please keep me out of hospital. And that actually happened. And so many people prayed for our family, were on their knees. I know the Trundles were praying for us. Lots and lots of people were praying for us, me and Bruno. So many of our church family. And those prayers were heard and were answered. And it was absolutely incredible. So internally, time slowed down and I was rooted to the spot with God. And externally, God showed up through people, whether they were asked or not asked. They just showed up for our family.
That's amazing. I'm just listening to it, Jeanette. I find that very emotional and very stirring that the people were obedient to the obvious needs that you had, but it sounded like some people were just in a moment, maybe being obedient to the Holy Spirit, would just hear a prompt and get on and do something that was just what you need in that moment. It's incredibly powerful to hear. Jack, what about you? Where was God in this for you and for Zoe? I know you're both suffering with the virus. Where did you find God in the midst of this challenge and the pain and suffering of it all?
I feel like I think we both felt of the amazing Church of Paul, and I think being a Christian and being a church family, when you go through this period or this kind of time, when you go through this illness, you really appreciate your church family, and I felt we both felt of the prayers massively, and we're also grateful for all the prayers that people bring for us and all the messages we were getting of support, and like people giving us food and people cooking for us and giving us goodies, like Jeanette was saying, and that was really we felt so blessing of that, of the church family, and also for me, I fully trusted in God throughout the whole period, and I knew that He was there for me for the whole period. I was never scared because I knew that God was there for me, and even through the tricky periods of time, I still fully trusted in Him because I know that He was there for me, and I know that He would never let me go. And even when I had to go to hospital, I was never scared about going to that because I know that He was there for me still. I know that God was always there, so I never had a doubt of that. And I feel like in the period of time when I was going through really badly, I used a lot of worship songs, which helped as well, just so that kind of like that spiritual input as well, just so that you don't feel alone. And also that song, the UK Blessing, which got released a few weeks ago, that really helped as well. That was I found it really emotional, but that was really cool.
There's something very biblical about that, Jack, that when people are physically, the scripture, we see moments where people are imprisoned, and their choice in that is to, rather than moan about the scenario or the injustice or the consequences of incarceration, their response is to worship. And so there's something very beautiful about, even though you're coughing your lungs up, just finding yourself in a place of worship is just a really beautiful and biblical response, to be quite frank, a New Testament biblical response. But again, very countercultural, singing of the might, the power, the authority, the love of God, the care of God, the grace of God, when it doesn't necessarily feel obvious, probably to those of us looking from the outside in. That's a beautiful bit of imagery. Well, this series, what we're looking at is this treasure and the riches, as we've already mentioned. The verse that we've taken goes on to say, so that you may know that I am the Lord your God and I've called you by name. There's this kind of personal, God does these things so we know His personal fatherly touch on our lives. What treasure or riches have you found in this season that when our world slowly starts to emerge from this, I think none of us are foolish enough to think everything's just going to change, the light switch is going to go back on and everything will be back to normal. But as the world slowly emerges from this, what treasure have you both found through this suffering, through this trauma, that will be treasure for the rest of your life, or things that you want to take into your future? So Jeanette, are you all right to field that one?
Yeah, there's a lot of treasure in this time that we have with illness, and one of the things I think is I'm really bad at quite a few things, and one of the things I'm really bad at is setting the bar ridiculously high for myself in terms of what I will and won't allow myself to cope with, what I will and won't allow myself to share with others and carry the burden. I've had no choice but to ask for help and to receive help, even though it's really hard for me to do that, because not asking for help, but for me not doing all of this on my own and showing that I am a capable parent, I am a capable teacher, whatever. It's very much tied up in my self-worth and self-esteem. And literally it's taken an event to floor me and root me to the spot so I can allow other people in. I am terrified of connection. There are reasons why I'm terrified of connection and getting too close to people, and people have just showed up out of love, and I've made new connections because of that and reinforced old connections. It's also connected the girls and me very much, and spending time together, seeing how they've stepped up and being in all of this has been absolutely incredible. Learning how to worship without a voice. Really hard. I really miss singing. I really miss not being able to produce any kind of sound. So I've had to learn to do that, and learn that worship is not purely about the sound that I make, but it's my heart intention. And to give thanks for everything that I have. And so my treasure is, I think of myself, I am quite a generous person. I do give where I can, and so I've tried to bless others in this period as well, where I felt that actually they've needed something, or they've wanted something that might have been a message, or it might have been a little delivery or something else. But when I was well, I just wanted to make the effort for people that maybe I don't know as well, and just to let them know that they are special, or something they've done. So to serve others has come out of this. Connection has come out of this, and the ability to ask and receive help.
Amazing. I love what you shared there, Jeanette. I love the redemptive nature of God, that through this trauma and suffering, God's even, it sounds like, started to help you deal with some of your past that's kind of inhibited you and chained you up. So even in the midst of being flawed by something, God seems to still be at work in drawing you more into the wholeness of who he created you to be, and out of your past into your present and your future. That's incredible to hear. What an amazing story. Jack, what about you? What treasures do you feel you've acquired in this season, in the, using that Isaiah's words, in the hidden places, in the secret places? Some translations talk about the dark places. What treasure have you acquired that you are going to carry now and into your future through what you've learned?
I think in this period, I think I've learned that of connection with people, of connecting with loads of different people for this period. And when I had the virus, people were so much connected with me, and people who were messaging me who didn't really connect with. I think what I take from that is keeping that connection with those people and going forward. And also I feel like as a couple, it means I've gone stronger through this, and as a and that's made us stronger as a married couple, and that we were able to go through that. That's taught us that we can go through anything, And even through this first year of marriage, it's been a very hard year in our first year of marriage, but we've got it through with the virus. And I think the treasure for me would probably be just keeping that deep relationship with the Father, and knowing that He's there for us, and just keep trusting in Him, and just never letting go, and just being that stronghold, and just never let Him go, and just never be fearful, because He's there, and because just keep trusting in Him, because He's never going to let us down, whatever happens.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both very much for opening up, sharing some of your pain, your suffering that you've been through. We have been standing with you, as you both referenced. As a church, we've been praying for you and been on sort of tenter hooks, desperately wanting to know that you're improving. And so it's so good to have you both on the screens today. I know you're both not still fully recovered, as you've mentioned, cough legacies and problems with feet and all sorts of things still there, but we're so glad to hear you are improving and that you're on the road to recovery, and even more glad am I to hear that you have learnt something deeper about who God is in this season, and that even in the darkest, most challenging places, firstly He's with us, and secondly He is redeeming us. He kind of taking the broken, fractured bits and just working them for His good. COVID was not of God, but He will redeem it, and He will work it to His good and His purposes, even where there's pain and suffering and loss. So thank you both on behalf of myself and the church family. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. We look forward to a day, hopefully not too far away, where we can embrace and drink coffee together and hear the full story for those that want to. But thank you both very much for all that you've shared.